Well, hello everyone, and welcome to our webinar. I am Amy Kuth, a patient educator with the Stephen and Barbara Slaggie Family Cancer Education Center here at Mayo Clinic, and I will be moderating this session. This is part 2 of our 5-part Cancer and Spiritual Wellbeing webinar series. The topic for today's webinar is hope and healing. We want people on this webinar to know that this session is being recorded, so individuals who are not able to join us for this live session can watch it later. For those who would like to view this webinar again, the recording takes about 3 days to be edited and put on the video library tab on our cancer education page on Mayo Clinic Connect. Mayo Clinic Connect is a digital platform where patients, family members, and caregivers can connect, get evidence-based information, and get access to information about classes and webinars that our center offers. We encourage you to follow our cancer education blog on Mayo Clinic Connect so that you can stay up to date on our education opportunities. Right now, I'm going to go ahead and put a link to our cancer education blog in the chat so that you can access that. So you should see it come through here. I also want to let everyone know that we will take questions at the end of today's session. So if you have questions related to this webinar topic, please type them into the Q&A function that you see at the bottom of your Zoom screen. All right, so I will now hand it over to Hannah Olson, who is one of our chaplains here at Mayo Clinic, and will be giving the presentation today.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Amy. I am so happy to be here with you all today to explore this topic of hope and healing a little bit. As Amy said, I'm one of the chaplains here at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester. And she also noted that we will have questions at the end. And I would encourage you to, if you have a question you might want to ask, but you're not sure if you want to type it in the chat, write it down so you have it so you can reflect on it or share it at the end if you feel like that's important. And take notes for yourself as you find that that's helpful. You know, if you find that meaningful themes are coming up for you, if you're noticing feelings that are important, I would encourage you to write them down so that you would be able to reflect on them later as well. So our topic for today is hope. And hope is arguably one of the central tenets of the human experience, right? It tethers us to ourselves throughout our lives. And it tethers us in the sense that it grounds us and guides us amid anything we may be experiencing. Those of us who have experiences with hospitals, right? You who have gone through treatment for long-term illnesses, for any illness, we know how central and important it is to feel grounded and tethered in something hopeful during that time. And within hope, we have possibility. There's a sense and belief that things will work out. Hope is forward-oriented. It's looking to the next step, and it's active in that it guides us to think towards the future, and it orients us helpfully to the present. Creativity. It is one of my favorite aspects of hope. The creative power present in hope is one of the things that really enlivens our sense of forward movement and our sense of possibility, even in circumstances that can feel very hopeless. Hope reminds us that we're creatures of imagination and of desire. Creation, or the desire to create, dwells within hope. When I say the desire to create, right, we might think of physically creating something like art or music, but I think this can also relate to the desire to create relationships, right? To create things that we hope for in the future, to create moments that are meaningful to us. And this creation, it can look like imagination or dreaming, desiring newness or renewal. And the hope of creativity really prompts us to see beyond the present moment or difficulty and helps us to envision that which we have not yet seen or experienced. And I imagine many of you might be able to relate to that, right? Like we've all struggled with seeing beyond the present moment of difficulty or the present moment of feeling overwhelmed by a certain feeling or emotion. And the hope of creativity, the hope of possibility is really something that can be positive in helping us to move forward from the present. Creativity and imagination are key aspects of hope for three really meaningful reasons. First, creativity enables us to imagine what we desire or want for ourselves. And then this connects us to a future orientation. And then it both grounds us in ourselves, right? We're aware of what we desire, we're aware of our hopes, but it also connects us to areas of meaning that might be bigger than or outside of our internal selves. I imagine that many of you who are joining us today can think of aspects of your lives which both ground you or give you meaning and also draw you into the world. And I'd invite us to just pause for a few moments to think about what are these aspects of our lives which both ground us and draw us into the world. That might draw us into community, might draw us into creation, might draw us into creative aspects of our lives. Just take a few moments and think of those, write them down if you have a pen and paper nearby. Perhaps for you, these can look like connections with loved ones, family, friends, chosen family, nurses, doctors, a care team, connecting with pets, music and art, right? Creation, singing, playing instruments, painting, knitting, crocheting, spirituality and faith, communities, right? That really draw us together and also promote our reflection or connection to a higher power or a spiritual being. Being present in nature. What an act of reflection, right? To be present, to be aware of our senses, and to also just be able to take in what is around us. These are just a few things that I can think of that I imagine you might think of that connect you to yourself and also draw you into a bigger sense outside of yourself. I included these flowers. I often think of the act of planting when I envision hope. I love plants and I love caring for my plants. I have many, many plants. And for me, that's an action that both grounds me and it guides me outside of myself. Planting seeds or repotting plants reminds me that growth and renewal are a process. Seeds take time to grow. Much of that growth we can't even physically see, right, until something has bloomed. So you kind of get to creatively imagine what will come as these plants propagate or as these flowers bloom and grow. And I encourage all of you to be present to the ways that hope might spring up in your life. It can become present to us unexpectedly or in surprising ways. I think most of us who have spent time in medical situations know that we can encounter hope in ways that are really unexpected to us. And I invite you to be open to that, especially in the setting of illness or as you care for loved ones who might be experiencing an illness, or as you recover or come alongside folks who are recovering. Now, of course, we have to speak to the aspect of hope in reality, right? Sometimes it feels really easy to talk about hope, and we also want to name that we all have our lives that we are living in this moment. So hope is grounded in reality, and we are also anchored in an imaginative hope, right? And at times we might feel restless, irritable, discontent, angry. We might experience grief, right? But that doesn't mean that we don't seek to be peaceful and happy and serene and experiencing joy and fulfillment all at the same time, right? The presence of hope in ourselves and in our lives does not negate whatever we might be experiencing emotionally or physically, right? You can still have hope that you're going to feel better tomorrow and still acknowledge that, oh, today I did not enjoy this treatment, right? That is a reality. And we still have room to hold hope next to that. Whatever we're experiencing, whether it's joy, discontent, confusion, worry, anxiety, there is space for that. Feelings are always valid. It's really necessary, as you're cultivating and as we're fostering hope, to be honest and recognizing where you are in the present moment. Anchoring yourself in hope, grounding yourself in that hope cultivates space and ability to persevere towards whatever future desires and hopes you may have. Anchoring oneself in hope is not an insignificant matter, right? And it can feel challenging to identify our anchors of hope, especially in the midst of crisis or anxiety or illness or caregiving. And I talk about identifying anchors of hope. I name that because I don't believe that everyone has the same exact hopes, right? That anchor us and ground us. So I think it's really important to say, you know what? My hopes, my anchors might be different than someone else's, and that is okay. So initially, we assess and identify, where does our faith or hope lie? If you're a person who connects with a faith tradition or finds meaning in spirituality or a community, connecting with God or a higher power or that supportive community may be very grounding for you. For example, next, we foster our trust and belief in that grounding experience for us. Then we cultivate creative action. We decide what our desires are, and we can implement actions, literally or figuratively, which match the desire or the hope. And these actions, right? I think when we think of action, we think of something that has to be very, very strong, right? Actions can be big, they can be small, they can be anywhere in between, right? That is what is meaningful and significant for you. So then we see our results. Results, of course, are personal and they vary uniquely from person to person and experience to experience. However, they will feel helpful, right, as the hope, and they may look like insight, wisdom, a renewed or a new perspective, identification of meaning, right? Saying, wow, this is something that really grounds me and anchors me in the midst of this experience. It might also look like forgiveness or really just building or taking in compassion. Hope and healing are very unique for each person. And there's no wrong way to cultivate hope and recognize healing in and for yourself, especially when we experience significant medical situations, significant illness, life-changing diagnoses, right? Whether we are the person experiencing that or someone accompanying an individual going through that, it can feel like you receive so many messaging about this is how you should feel, or this is the stage you should be going through. The reality is that you will experience your emotions and they're valid and they are meaningful. You might identify ways that are more helpful than others to cultivate hope and recognize healing. And that in and of itself is a form of self-awareness and hopeful growth. Throughout the process of hope and healing, you can engage what is meaningful for you. Is your faith important to you? Engage ways that you connect with it. Perhaps connecting with your loved ones and processing with them is really helpful for you. Connect with them in supportive ways, sharing meals, processing at the end of a long day, checking in with mentors, maybe just cuddling your pet, right? Holding your cat in your lap, taking a walk outside, watering your flowers. These can all be meaningful ways to invite hope into your life and to foster healing as well. And just a reminder to allow yourself grace and patience. This is a process and we are all human. Hope and healing are not about perfectionism or success versus failure. You are identifying what anchors you through anything that you may be facing. And these, we hope, are sustainable tools in order that you may know yourself better and encounter healing wherever it is meaningful for you. Thank you so much, everyone. We will have some time for questions. Thank you, Amy.
All right. Wow, Hannah, thank you for that. I really appreciate you giving us a framework for what hope might look like in our lives. I think hope is kind of sort of this broad topic, and
Mm,
to have some sort of a framework and definition that can be helpful as well. So I really appreciate that.
totally.
I'm curious to hear the questions that we have from our audience today. I'm going to pause for just a moment to allow any questions to come through. As a reminder, you can enter your questions in the Q&A function on the bottom of your Zoom screen. So we'll pause
Perfect.
for just a moment to allow people a chance to type.
Great. Thanks, Amy.
Absolutely. So we did have one question that came through right away. And this person wants to know, what is the difference between hope and optimism?
That is such a great question. Yeah, absolutely. You know, when I think of that initially, I think my answer would be that hope is something that we hope is sustainable, right? And we hope it is persevering. And it might shift and change over time. Um, and it's something that really abides with us, right? Even as we might be experiencing situations that are anxiety provoking or that cause worry, it's something that really grounds us. Optimism, of course, right? We all want to have an optimistic attitude, and that is oftentimes not necessarily something that is going to ground us within ourselves. I would say optimism is something that can often grow out of that sense of hope and that sense of grounding when we surround ourselves with the things that are going to bring meaning and significance into our lives. We really cultivate that optimistic attitude and outlook. Does that make sense?
I'm gonna unmute myself here. Yes.
Perfect.
Thank you. Thank you for
Yeah.
answering that. It's a common question, actually, because we just had another one come through. Very similar question. How would you describe the difference between hope and wishful thinking?
Oh, yeah.
Is there anything that you would add in in that context at all?
Yeah, I think that's really interesting too. When I was preparing, thinking about hope and healing, I thought about desire a lot, and I think desire can sound a little bit like what we wish for. Um, and wishful thinking, right, can be both really realistic. It can also be maybe rooted in a place that's not as realistic. But I think that also that wish can grow out of our sense of hope, right? I mean, that promotes us forward. And reminds us that, yeah, we have things we hope for. We do have things we're wishing for and dreaming of. Um, and I think that can really be connected to a sense of hope, right? In a way that's helpful. Um, yeah, so that's kind of what I would add to that, looking at optimism and wishful thinking and how they relate to hope.
Awesome. Thank you. We've got quite a few questions coming through now. For someone struggling with how to see any forward movement or ways to connect with what they've found meaning in or may not now, what suggestions would you offer on walking with them?
Mm, hmm. Yeah. I think that something that can be helpful to remember, especially when we go through really life-changing diagnoses or illnesses, is that where we find our hope and inspiration changes, and that's okay. What we might have hoped for before a diagnosis that changes the way we look at life, and that really impacts our life will probably shift what we hope for, and that's okay. And that can even change day by day. And I think reminding a loved one or someone you might be walking next to through that it's okay to experience that shift can be really powerful, especially when we receive sometimes a lot of messaging that things should be one way or you should feel this way. Just to be reminded that whatever you're experiencing is okay and whatever you're hoping for matters can be really important. I hope that's helpful.
Yes, well said. Thank you. This is also kind of a similar question. This person wants to know, what is the first step in helping someone who is really down begin to find hope? And I heard you in your answer to that last question talk a lot about even just reminding someone that it's okay. Is there anything that you would
Mhm.
add to that?
Yeah, I think that a good question too can also just be asking someone to explore, have they experienced any moments of hope lately, right? And that, I think I mentioned this, but that can be a scale of things, right? Like sometimes a moment of hope is like, wow, I finally get to get a meal after this surgery, right? Or oh my gosh, I can like go for a walk outside. Um, just thinking about where are some of the things that we might see as small or insignificant in our lives that are really bringing us a lot of hope, that can really shift our perspective and our lens.
Great, thank you. Um, let's see. This person says, I am trying to be positive with my cancer diagnosis, but it often feels like I'm just faking it. Is there a point where hope becomes counterproductive because it keeps you from accepting reality? And we also had
Mm,
a similar comment coming through with regards to the difference between hope and optimism and wishful thinking in the context of reality as well.
hmm. Yeah. You know, I think that is really, that can be really personal for everyone. Something I like to think about, I like to use the words, what is helpful and what might not feel as helpful to us. I think a lot of the times when we're really looking at ourselves with some self insight and self awareness, we can identify the feeling of this feels really helpful for me and this feels not helpful for me, right? That can feel like maybe we're stuck in a place where we don't want to be anymore, or we've thought about something and it feels like it's just really not moving for us. And I think that can be a way to sort of take an inventory on, is this thought, is this desire still serving me, or do I want to expand how I'm thinking about this at this time?
Great, thank you. Let's see. Hope is unique to everyone. Most examples were for creative introverts,
Mm.
flowers, growth, quiet. How do extroverts with strong faith look for hope? More tangible anchors for hope.
Oh, that's a good question. I myself identify as an extrovert. And that's a good question because I think also for extroverts, yeah, we're looking for those really tangible things. I think connecting with communities can be a big part of it, right? Doing external things that are going to connect you, right? That also ground you in yourself and that feel helpful for you. Um, Maybe that looks like gathering people together, right? To share a meal, reminding yourself what it feels like to be surrounded by a community. Maybe it means singing with a choir, right? Maybe it means doing something that you really enjoy with other people, just to have that action of connection. I think those can be really, really important things that can draw you into that extroverted external space.
Those are great suggestions. Um, this person wants to know, what does the research say about practicing hope or about how practicing hope affects cancer patient outcomes? Is there anything that you're aware of?
Oh, that, yeah, I love that. I guess I'm not thinking of anything off the top of my head. I know there are definitely statistics about like identifying what is helpful or hopeful for you and then connecting with those things. And I guess I'm not as necessarily familiar with those immediately. But I think that that is a really good question. And I would welcome anyone to send those resources our way so that I could see them because I would love to.
Awesome. I think some of these questions as well, especially when it comes to research and those are great questions for your care team too.
Yeah,
They might have
absolutely.
some good resources or research that they can
Mhm.
share with you as well.
Mhm.
Whether it's about hope or whether it's about any other questions
Mhm.
that you may have regarding your
Mhm.
care or patient outcomes. So
Yeah,
excellent
absolutely.
questions. Yeah. Wow, we have had a lot of really great questions come through here. Um, this one more just came through. Is there research on the power of doing volunteer work?
Okay, so that I can't name this research, the title of this research off the top of my head or where it happened, but I think this correlates to volunteer work. I definitely know there's research done about the impact of, I don't want to use the word caring for things, but like for example, the impact of giving folks a plant to care for or a fish to care for, and that has shown that has really positive impacts. And so I can imagine that that action of volunteering, which I think is also one of those extroverted ways, I would see that as an extroverted way to connect, right? And also like build meaning, build significance. I can only imagine that that would really positively impact a sense of hope. Um, I think volunteering is also a way where we hear the stories of others oftentimes, right? Whether it's through an organization or with individuals. And I think connecting in that way, right, brings us meaning and helps us to recognize the ways that we really are interconnected, even outside of ourselves. Does that make sense, Amy?
Yeah, it really seems like
Great.
connection is a theme here that I'm hearing kind of interwoven throughout the entire talk within these questions as well. So thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. And thanks for the questions. I really love all the research questions. So I'll probably have to look into this a little bit myself afterwards. So thank you for the inspiration, everyone.
Our audience has inquiring and curious minds, and that's always a good thing. So
Mhm.
awesome. All right. Well, I don't see any other questions at this point. So with that, I will go ahead and close out this session. So first of all, I would like to thank everyone for participating. You can click on the link that I shared in the chat to learn more about our upcoming classes and webinars that we are offering. And you can also go there to view this recording once it is posted in our video library. I want to remind you that when this webinar has ended, you will be prompted to take a quick survey, and we would really appreciate your willingness to fill out the survey, as your feedback is super helpful to ensure that we're offering educational opportunities that are actually going to be valuable for you. So that feedback really helps us out. All right, well, with that, I will say thank you and have a great rest of your day.